The National Hot Rod Association presents Championship Drag Racing on ESPN Speed World. The NHRA, the world's largest motorsports sanctioning body, showcasing speeds in excess of 290 miles an hour and traveling the quarter mile in less than 5 seconds. Championship Drag Racing from the NHRA. The 1990 Winston Championship Funny Car Points Chase has boiled down to 2 drivers. The first is Ed McCulloch, enjoying his finest season ever. McCulloch has had the Winston Championship clearly in his sights all year long. With the mechanical expertise of crew chief Bernie Federle, the McCulloch team has notched 4 national events into the win column in 1990, taking his career total to 17. The other driver is John Force, with a mindset that believes that winning is everything. John Force and crew chief Austin Coyle have pursued the Winston Championship with a determination seldom seen in any form of motorsport. Coming into the 1990 season with 5 career national event victories, John Force's single-mindedness has propelled him and his team to 7 1990 event wins, equaling achievements by Don Prudhomme and Kenny Bernstein. The 7 event wins have secured John Force a place at the top of the current Winston point standings. And if he should go 2 rounds further than Ed McCulloch in eliminations today, John Force will clinch the coveted Winston Funny Car Championship. All of this funny car action takes place today at one of the nation's true super tracks, the Texas Motorplex at Dallas, Texas, home of the Chief Auto Parts Nationals. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the sunshine of Texas. The temperature here at the Motorplex in the mid-80s, not a cloud in the sky, just like it's been for 4 consecutive days at this Chief Auto Parts Nationals. As I said a few moments ago, this is a pivotal race for John Force and Ed McCulloch. For more on what's happened on the Winston Championship Trail at this race, let's join my good friend Steve Evans.
David, the crew of John Force will long remember the season that was 1990. As you put it, what they have to do is win 2 more rounds of racing today than Ed McCulloch to clinch their first ever Winston Championship. But things started going very sour yesterday afternoon. This was John Force's final qualifying run. The old nemesis was back. The engine banged, lifting the body completely off the chassis. But again, this crew worked all night trying to find the problems. They went to the starting line, round 1. Earlier today against an old rival, Casey Spurlock had no idea what the car would do. What happened? Their driver came through. John Force strapped a hole shot on Spurlock and won with a slightly slower elapsed time. So with Force safely through round 1, all eyes turned to Ed McCulloch racing Freddie Neely. McCulloch won with a brilliant 5:28. Well, it looked brilliant at the time until Mike Dunn came along later in the round and recorded a 5:19 to take lane choice away from Ed McCulloch. It'll be those 2 getting together in round number 2. Now, how does Mike Dunn feel about being a spoiler, and how does Ed McCulloch feel about Mike Dunn? John Force is around here so much, I thought he was on your crew for a while.
Yeah, he's been to go over here give me some driving tips to try to help me out. So, but we'll see how it goes. I'm just going to go up there and run my race. Ace is awfully tough. He runs good. Hopefully, just go out and run my race, cut my light, and hopefully if we can run another 19, we're going to give him a good shot.
Well, Mike Dunn's, they're a hard runner. They've, come in here with new car, new combination, and they're out there doing just fine,
They've got lane choice on you. They run a 5:19. Has to surprise this team a bit, doesn't it?
Well, not really. I mean, I figured that Mike could probably run good. I was hoping that he wouldn't get lane choice on us, but he did, but that doesn't matter. Lane choice right here, I don't care. I mean, the only time I will care is if somebody oils it right in front of us before we have to run or something, but I don't think there's a big difference in the lanes.
And of course, loyal drag racing fans everywhere know of the tremendous points battle in Top Fuel between defending Winston champion Gary Ormsby and Joe Amato. Amato came into the Chief Nationals here with the points lead and padded that another 50 bonus points for qualifying number 1 at 5:93. Looks like nobody will take that away from me. Earlier today in round number 1, both Ormsby and Joe Amato advanced to round 2. Also held, well, just a few minutes ago. And in round 2, Joe Amato, after having changed engines, maybe it distracted him, was a little late, and Kenny Bernstein drilled him with a hole shot. Joe was down.
Well, Steve, it's tough. We've got a main bearing in the motor in the last run. We had to put a fresh engine in there, and we just trying to be consistent and steady up there. But a world championship hunt. Everybody's got to do what they've got to do.
Well, now you hope Lori Johns does what she has to do to Gary Ormsby.
Well, you know, all we can do is pray at this point in time.
Well, Joe got even more depressed just a few minutes after we talked when he saw Lori Johns, who had lane choice, smoke the tires against Gary Ormsby. Ormsby added 200 points to his score and could leave here with the points lead. But first, he's got to get around Frank Hawley in round 3, still to come today. Hawley will have the lane choice. In Pro Stock, well, the finest battle in years. 5 drivers came to Dallas, still in the running for that Winston Championship. The big news is Darrell Alderman in the Dodge, who set the record and won the race in Topeka 2 weeks ago. Well, his strategy worked. He reset the record here in Dallas, took 200 more bonus points, 50 points for qualifying low. Well, nobody had to do the math for Darrell. He vaulted into the lead and was a happy man.
7:18. That tickles me to death. We was wanting to hit the teens today. It felt like it come down a little bit on me off the starting line there. It fell a little bit, but a 7:18's good enough for me.
Steve, Darrell may be happy with the performance of his Dodge, but I can tell you 4 guys that aren't. They're in contention for the Winston standings. We're talking about Warren Johnson, Jerry Ekman, Larry Morgan, and Bob Glidden. As we pick up action here in round number 2 of Pro Stock at the Chief Auto Parts Nationals. Here is a car that was formerly campaigned by Larry Morgan. It is now owned and driven by Vince Curry. And Vince, by virtue of his actions in round number 1, has already written into his own personal record book the greatest weekend he's ever had on a drag strip. Out of Mount Clemens, Michigan, in round number 1, Vince Curry squared off against Warren Johnson in the AC Delco Oldsmobile. The 2 Oldsmobiles staged very carefully. Curry to the right of your screen, Johnson on the left. As they left the starting line, Curry pulled ahead and all the way to the finish line. It was the biggest upset of round number 1. Vince Curry moving past Warren Johnson.
Yeah, we left good. It just clutch never locked up until about second gear, pulled second gear, and just let go completely and just ran away from it.
Well, it's going to be painful for you to watch that second round, points-wise.
That's racing. You know what it's like.
Oh, boy. We're learning more and more what it's like.
Warren's watched this happen before this year. Tony Christian is the competition in round number 2 for Vince Curry. This is the first race in well over a year for Christian. He is at the wheel of Harold Whitmore's Chevy Beretta. Starter Buster Couch signaling to Vince Curry. Put it in there. He did it too late. Buster threw the switch, and it is a red light for Curry. An automatic win for Tony Christian. He advances to the final 4 with a time of 7.36 seconds. His speed, 186 miles an hour. The 1990 NHRA Chief Auto Parts Nationals is being brought to you by Ford and your local Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by Bud Light. Everything is just a light. More Pro Stock action coming up at the Chief Auto Parts National. Back at the Texas Motorplex near Dallas in the Chief Auto Parts Nationals, the largest crowd in the history of this racetrack has jammed in for the action today, and John Force just got a lucky break.
David, the car you're looking at should be headed for the staging lanes, but instead it lies silently in the pit area, and it will remain here. We're talking about the machine of Tim Gross, and Tim, you can't make the call.
Well, unfortunately, you know, the way the car's been performing all season long, we've never heard a stitch, so I keep knocking on wood. We'd actually gone through the procedure of just routinely pulling off the oil pan, checking the clutch, and we got down the last set of rod bearings, and that's when we discovered the number 2 main had been cracked.
You can clearly see the crack
Yeah,
right here.
correct. And in this type of a situation, this is a very old block. This was a block that I won the Winter Nationals with in '86. It's got a lot of laps on her, and we've been putting different studs in it here and there, and just when this went away, no way we could go to the line.
This is also very bad news for Ed McCullough. It means John Force has a bye.
And Ed McCullough, of course, as we heard earlier, has got to run the hottest car in Eliminations, Mike Dunn and his Pontiac. Right now, we're in round number 2 of Pro Stock Racing in the near lane. The Motorcraft Ford Probe of Bob Glidden. There's Bob's son, Billy, directing traffic. Glidden is going for his 11th Winston title, and this is a crucial race. He came into this event in the number 5 spot in the points standing. And the Whiteland, Indiana driver has not had the greatest year of his career, winning only 2 races. Sitting opposite of him is the Castrol Oldsmobile of Larry Morgan. This driver came into this race in the number 2 spot in the standings, but both of these men have watched Darrell Alderman take over the lead by virtue of his new national record. The Ford in the near lane, the Oldsmobile in the far lane, both using 500 cubic inch engines. The cars themselves, 2,350 pounds with the driver on board. A tremendous race. And Bob Glidden upsets Larry Morgan. Bob Glidden with an elapsed time of 7.34 seconds at 188 miles an hour just blew away the number 3 qualifier Morgan. As we watch again in replay, Morgan's 7:35 didn't do him much good when Glidden not only outran him, but also had the advantage at the starting line. It was a close race. As they neared the finish line, Morgan and Glidden were jockeying for the victory, and it came in the near lane to the Ford of Glidden by just a few feet. That narrow loss by Morgan could well spell the end of his Winston Championship hopes. On the starting line, a pair of Pontiacs going through the burnout procedure. This is Jerry Ekman at the wheel of Bill Orndorff's Pennzoil Pontiac. Ekman has had quite a weekend thus far. He qualified with the fine time of a 7:25. And in his first round race, the Ventura, California driver beat Don Beverly. Opposite him on the starting line is Ricky Smith. His STP Pontiac qualified number 5 with a 7:26 and beat Joe Lapone in round number 1. The lane choice in this round goes to the driver that had a quicker elapsed time in his winning run in round 1, and that is Ricky Smith. He has selected the lane nearest the camera. Parlays his advantage off the starting line into a stunning victory. 7:36 at 187 miles an hour. Smith very close at a 7:37, but 0.03 of a second advantage went to Ekman by virtue of his quicker reaction time at the starting line. This keeps Ekman's hopes alive for his first ever Winston title. As they neared the finish line, Ekman continued to hold on to the lead. And as they traveled the 1,320 feet that make up a championship drag racing track, Jerry Ekman maintained that lead until they crossed the finish line. Ekman the winner. No, you're not seeing doubles. This is the Ricky Smith team car, driven by young Tim McCamus. He has performed very well here. The Moscow Mills, Missouri chassis builder qualified number 8 with a 7:28, then beat Bruce Allen in round number 1 with a 7:32. Great times until you consider what Darrell Alderman has done. He set the national record, qualified number 1 with a 7:18 and ran a 7:24. He's got lane choice. He is seen on the right-hand side of your screen. A red light for McCamus, and what a break for Alderman in his quest for the Winston crown. Alderman advances into the final 4. His elapsed time, a slow for him, 7:31 at 189 miles an hour. McCamus a 7:34, but too quick at the starting line. The final 4 finds the Pontiac of Ekman against Darrell Alderman's Dodge, with Alderman having the lane choice. Tony Christian and his Chevy Beretta against the Ford Probe of Bob Glidden, and Glidden picks the lane. There's trouble in the top fuel pit area. You're looking at a motor that has been removed from Darrell Gwynn's car, driven by Frank Hawley. The crew, headed up by crew chief Ken Veeney and manager Jerry Gwynn, reinstalling a complete new engine, getting it ready to race Gary Ormsby in the top fuel final 4. At the Chief Auto Parts Nationals at the Texas Motorplex, we're into round number 2 of Funny Car Eliminator. Here is the Ray Bestis Clutches car, owned by Nick Bonanfante and driven by 22-year-old Richard Hartman, the youngest hired driver on the circuit today, and certainly one of the most successful. He qualified the Pontiac-bodied car in the number 6 spot with a 5:25, then ran very close to that in his first round race against Glenn Micris, where he logged in a 5:28. That earned him the right to race against Mark Oswald, the man that set a new speed record here at the Chief Auto Parts Nationals at over 284 miles an hour. But in his first round race with Al Hoffman, disaster struck. In the single most violent engine explosion I have ever witnessed, Mark Oswald was like a billiard ball on a pool table, caroling off the concrete guardrails at the Texas Motorplex until the car dragging the parts and pieces behind it finally came to a stop. Obviously battered by the concussion of the explosion and the impact with the guardrails, Oswald was helped from the car by the NHRA Safety Safari crew. The vehicle itself, after the initial fire and explosion, was nothing but a rolling chassis. As we look again, you can see where the problem started for Oswald. A part broke in the valve train. That allowed a cylinder to fill with fuel. The engine hydraulic and exploded into that giant fireball. The safety requirements demanded by NHRA certainly proved beneficial for Oswald. With the chassis sideways in the racetrack and Mark wrestling for control, the car slammed into the guardrail with heavy impact. Mark knocked from side to side in the roll cage. Steve Evans was there.
Mark, considering how little control you had with a blown tire, you did a heck of a job.
I just tried to stay as straight as I could. Steve had just had oil and everything all over the front of the visor, and you know, I really couldn't understand why I hit the guardrail. I thought I held the car pretty straight, but they said it pretty much lifted the car right off the ground.
What were you doing when you put your hand in your glove way up in the air?
I was trying to see if the body was still on. I was feeling for the roof hatch to see if I was going to have to get out or not. I couldn't tell if the body was still on.
Well, banged up a little bit, but basically you're okay?
Yeah, we'll be back. I'm fine.
A courageous young man, Mark Oswald, will be looking for him and the Motorcraft crew out at Pomona in a couple of weeks. If there is a beneficiary from all of that action, it is Richard Hartman. He gets a single here in round number 2 of the Chief Auto Parts Nationals. Of course, lane choice dependent upon his elapsed time. If he runs quick, he gets to pick the lane in the next round. And he advances to the final 4 with a 5.28 second elapsed time. His speed, 269 miles an hour. A nice conservative run for Richard Hartman. Meanwhile, back in the pits and staging lanes, you remember all the problems that Frank Hawley and crew were having with Darrell Gwynn's car, putting the new engine in and all? Well, his competition in the Top Fuel Final 4, Gary Ormsby's already headed into the staging lane. A nice easy between round maintenance for the Castrol crew. They're coming up to watch their teammate John Force take a single here in round number 2 and get a big break. Tim Gross, remember Steve showed us the broken main cap earlier? Gross was to have been the competitor for the Castrol Olds of Force, but was unable to answer the call. So the guy they call Mr. Determination, who came from his number 9 qualifying spot with only a 5.26, is now advancing into the final 4. This guy takes whatever he does serious as can be. Not only does he race hard, he plays hard. Remember the Darrell Gwynn benefit softball game? John Force, one of the toughest competitors at whatever he does. Through the quarter mile, Force with a great 5.27, 276 miles an hour. We'll see him a little bit later in the final 4. More funny car racing featuring Ed McCulloch coming up next. Back at the Texas Motorplex near Dallas and the Chief Auto Parts Nationals, I'm Dave McClellan along with Steve Evans, and we're getting set for more action in round number 2 of Funny Car Eliminator. But first, let's check in at the far end of the racetrack and Steve Evans.
Well, John Force, you had a break there, a bye run, but not many cars could have run with you anyway, buddy. 5.27.
Well, that single took a lot of pressure off us. It's kind of like you wonder if God loves you or hates you, because yesterday, everything we did, we felt we were being punished for in the day. Just everything seems to be going right.
If it keeps going right, John could clinch his first ever Winston title this day at the Motorplex. This is the Hawaiian Bunch Dodge Daytona, driven by Jim White and the new national record holder. He qualified here with a 5.14. That is the new mark. He won his first round race over Dal Denton, earning the right to race Chuck Etchels, who qualified 7th with a 5.26 and beat Scott Coletta in round number 1. Etchels, the winner at the Summer Nationals up in Englishtown, New Jersey, earlier this season. He brings his mother's performance Pontiac into the near lane. The lane choice going to Jim White. He ran a fine 5:25 in his first round victory. There's Roland Leong, the car owner and crew chief, watching intently as both cars staging. White with tremendous power off the starting line and continues all the way through the quarter mile to take the victory, even quicker than his first round race, 5:24, 278 miles an hour. That puts him into the final four of Funny Car. This is a must-win for this man. The driver of the Miller High Life Oldsmobile, Ed McCulloch, has got to win here to keep pace with John Force. He has no margin for error. McCulloch, should he lose, could watch Force with one more round victory clinch the Winston Funny Car crowd. Here's the guy that could stop McCulloch. This is Mike Dunn at the wheel of the Snickers Pontiac. Steve?
Well, first, there's congratulations to Jim White for setting a new national record and backing it up at 5:14. What's really important right now, though, you'll have lane choice over Richard Hartman with a 5:24.
Oh, thank you very much. Roland, Leong, the whole crew, Wes Cerny have done an excellent job with the car all weekend. The track's good, the weather's good, and the car's running great.
The weather really, though, is the difference, that 10th from a 14 to a 24.
Yeah, it sure is. And we're being a little more conservative today than we were on Thursday and Friday.
There was nothing conservative about that man on Thursday and Friday.
Steve, the conservatism today reflects the need to win races rather than set low elapsed time. This car has low ET of eliminations, a 5:19. Mike Dunn, driving E.B. Abel's Pontiac, came in and qualified in the number 4 spot at a 5:23. His competition, McCulloch, qualified 5th with a 5:24, and as we heard earlier, beat Freddie Neely in round number 1. That set up this race that could have such an impact on the Winston Championship. Remember, there is only one race left this season. John Force knows it. He's watching from a vantage point right at the starting line. McCulloch and Dunn staging very carefully. This is no time to make a mistake. They're set. And Dunn with an advantage off the starting line. He powers ahead of McCulloch to a 5:25 at 2:74. A losing time, 5:27. And look at John Force. He hardly knows how to react as John Gardella of Castrol comes over to offer his congratulations, as Force is just one round win away from his first ever series title. Let's look again at what happened to Ed McCulloch. Mike Dunn gained 0.05 of a second advantage off the starting line. Then add to that the 0.02 of a second advantage in elapsed times, and it was Mike Dunn winning this race by more than a car length. Steve?
I'm afraid bad luck is probably the best words to describe today, Ace. Force getting the single, just nothing went your way.
Well, that's drag racing, Steve.
You'd think a 5:27 would be enough, and it normally would be, but Dunn let a 25 down.
Well, you know, Dunn's been tough here. I mean, we really weren't, you know, we weren't concerned with Dunn any more than anybody else. I mean, you know, we're out there trying to run as good as we can, and, you know, it wasn't good enough.
Next round, John Force gets Mike Dunn.
Well, you know, I mean, it's as good as over. I mean, Force has had all the luck in the world. You know, I'm not trying to take anything away from the guys, but they're damn lucky, and how do you beat luck? You can't.
The frustration obvious on the face of Ed McCulloch, but he has one consolation. John Force now has to run Mike Dunn, and by 0.02 of a second, Dunn has the lane choice. Jim White gets to pick his lane over Richard Hartman in the final four of Funny Car here at the Chief Auto Parts National. The work is over for the Darrell Gwynn crew. They've got this car ready to race Gary Ormsby in Top Fuel Eliminator. It'll be final four time in just a moment here at the Motorplex. Our first pair of drivers getting set for Final Four action in Top Fuel Eliminator. This is certainly one of the most popular drivers here today, Eddie Hill, the Texan out of Wichita Falls. Here's a guy that started his career in Texas. We're talking, of course, about Kenny Bernstein. Right now, let's go into the pits with Steve Evans. He's with a happy man.
John Force, you just love Mike Dunn at Topeka when he beat McCullough. You loved him even more today when he again beat McCullough. Now he stands in your way.
Well, I always loved him when he was a snot-nosed kid, I did. You know, you go back, him and his dad, I mean, that Abel boy over there, they made the right connection when they hired them guys, because they made a mistake. Nobody ever gave them no money, and they got real grizzly out there.
He's a driver.
He's a heck of a driver, and he's one of the guys, like I said, guys like him and Mickers, these new guys coming up, White, they're really aggressive, they're real tough, but I can't even be mad at him. He's helped me so much, and so many times, you know, I felt sorry for them guys being short on budget, but he sure made my day out here.
Makes it simple for us, too, John. If you can beat Mike Dunn, you're the champ. Here's Eddie Hill in the Super Shop Special. Hill, the first driver ever in the 4-second range, did it right here on this racetrack. His crew chief, Fuzzy Carter, directing traffic in the rear of the car. His wife, Ursi, out in front of the yellow missile. For Hill, he's not had the best of seasons. He ran 493 a couple of years ago, but he has had lots of problems ever since. His competition here in the Final Four is a man that knows about problems, particularly this season. Kenny Bernstein, the Budweiser King. He qualified number 8 with a 5:03, beat Mike Brotherton, and most importantly, he took out Joe Amato. Hill qualified 4th with a 4:96, beat Shirley Muldowney and Tommy Johnson Jr. in rounds 1 and 2. But here, the lane choice goes to Bernstein. He had a 5:03 in round 2 to Hill's 5:04. Let's ride along with Kenny Bernstein. And there's Eddie Hill, and Eddie Hill wins it. Right at the finish line, you saw Eddie Hill's car nose ahead. Look at Fuzzy Carter. 5:04, the winning time at 2:75. Bernstein with a giant advantage off the starting line, slowed to a 5:11 at 2:72. Bernstein had a giant advantage by virtue of a quicker reaction time. Look at the lead he had at 1/8 of a mile. But Eddie Hill was thundering. Here he came, slowly making his way past Bernstein until by just a couple of feet, Eddie Hill nosed out Bernstein to advance to the final. Gary Ormsby knows one thing. If he wins this race, he picks up an additional 200 points on Joe Amato, and that would make the Top Fuel Winston points chase virtually a dead heat with one race remaining. Let's go to Steve.
Eddie Hill, welcome back to the world of final rounds. That's where you're headed.
Oh, man, I'm glad y'all are coming over here talking to me. It's been so long since we've talked.
I've missed you. A 5:04 for you, but you had to chase him down. He was away first.
Yeah, he does that, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I need to work on my reaction time, and we're working on it. Not having much luck, but we're working on it.
Certainly the car is coming around, and the folks love you here. It was where you ran your first four, the sports first four. It's a special place for you.
It really is, and the people stayed with me all this time, you know. They didn't back off when the performance of the car backed off. I'm glad we're going to be in a final round for them.
You better get some crowd control. You'll have a mob around this car as you get it ready.
Eddie Hill obviously pleased with his performance. Look at him just urging his crew on. Here's a guy that needs no urging. We're talking about the crew chief on the Top Fuel Extra, Gary Ormsby. That's Lee Beard out directing traffic, regarded by many as one of the premier crew chiefs in this sport. This car 2 weeks ago ran a 488 at 296 miles an hour. But Ormsby has not neared that performance here. He qualified 6th at a 5:01 and beat Frank Bradley and Laurie Johns earlier. But for Frank Hawley, a brilliant 494 led to a first-round victory over Chris Karamessinis. He then defeated Dick LaHaye in round number 2. The engine change that we saw taking place on Frank Hawley's car, obviously not presenting any problems to this point. Most of these leading teams have multiple engines pretty well dialed in. They know what those engines will do. That has become almost a necessity to compete at this level. Hawley in the far lane, Ormsby in the near lane. What a crucial race for Ormsby. And Hawley from start to finish wins it. Darrell Gwynn gives him a wave. There's smoke coming out of the engine. They may have heard another one, but the 5:05.281, good enough for the victory. And Gary Ormsby loses a chance to advance on Joe Amato. Ormsby got a very slight advantage off the starting line. but the performance of the Coors Extra Gold car was superlative. As they neared half-track, Hawley had built up an extensive lead, and even though Ormsby ran a much faster speed, a 287 to a 281, he could not run him down. The final finds Eddie Hill with lane choice over Frank Hawley. At the far end of the track, Steve Evans.
Frank, you had a fresh motor in for the semifinals. You won with a 505. It may take another motor.
Well, it actually wasn't a fresh motor because the motor we heard around before was brand new and we just got Saturday night. So this was a used motor, and the guys really were in a hurry to try and get this ready to race conditions, but it was good enough.
A great job. You've got a great opponent in the final, Eddie Hill.
Well, yeah, I've run Eddie a lot, and I think we owe him a few. I'll look forward to it.
And he's got lane choice, Eddie Hill, that is.
At the Chief Auto Parts Nationals at the Texas Motorplex. Lots of work going on the E.B. Abel car. This is Mike Dunn's entry. There's his dad, Jim. He's the crew chief on this race car. Let's go to Steve with Gary Ormsby.
Every fan that heard of the 488 296 at Topeka thought that this car would rotate the earth on this all-concrete track. It didn't happen.
No, it didn't, Steve. We were basically off a little bit all weekend, and we probably were fortunate to go as far as we did.
You made up some ground on Amato, but you really needed to beat Hawley to go away here feeling pretty good about it.
That's for sure. You know, I think he's somewhere around 250. I don't know exactly ahead of us, and that's a lot over one round of racing going into the final. But we'll see what happens.
Indeed, we will.
As we get set for the Final Four in Pro Stock, let me remind you that at the end of the race, we're going to be announcing the winner of the Goodyear Eagle Driver of the Race Award. And Goodyear will be giving $1,000 to SEMA, the scholarship fund of the Specialty Equipment Market Association, in that driver's name. In the near lane, the Chevrolet of Tony Christian. In the far lane, Bob Glidden and his Ford. This is a crucial race for Glidden. To retain even a mathematical chance of winning the Winston title, he's got to win. Wins it. The look on Rusty Glidden's face tells it all. As Tony Christian, with a tremendous hole shot and advantage off the starting line, used a 738 at 186-mile-an-hour run to beat the 740 by Glidden. Darrell Alderman brings his record-holding Dodge Daytona across the line with the tires ablaze. Alongside of him, the Pontiac of Jerry Ekman doing the same. Both drivers heating up those 17-inch wide tires, trying for the most traction possible. Steve?
You know, when you left the sport a year or so ago, Bob Glidden was an arch rival. Nothing's changed.
Nah, I'm still beating him. I don't know. I'm having fun. The old saying, when was the last time you thumped the Ford? Have you thumped the Ford lately?
Right.
I'll tell you, that's one of the most biggest gentlemen out in this sport. I asked him before this race, I said, Bob, as all these guys are out here playing games for the World Championship, he says, Tony, let's get out there and race. I can't tell you what that means, but a lot of you might know.
That's what this sport is all about, bud.
No holds barred racing. That's what you just saw between Bob Glidden and Tony Christian. Christian into the finals. He'll race the winner of this match. Both drivers not about ready to waste an opportunity for a victory here. They're both in contention for the title. Advantage Alderman. 734 at 187 miles an hour. Ekman 737 at 187. Let's look again. Ekman got the advantage at the starting line. But Alderman has told us at the last several races that his Dodge loves these good fighting racetracks like the Texas Motorplex, particularly in first and second gear. He quickly overcame the starting line advantage that had been gained by Ekman. The Dodge nosed ahead until at the finish line, the margin of victory, 0.02 of a second.
You know, you figured in the final round it'll be Ekman, or it'll be Glidden, or it'll be Johnson. Tony Christian?
I tell you, Tony Christian's tough. I tell you, he cuts those good lights, and we got our hands full.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Darrell Alderman making a charge for the Winston title. Tony Christian, his competitor in the finals. Alderman picks the lane. Funny car action coming up next. This race may clinch a Winston Championship title here at the Texas Motorplex. John Force brings his battle-scarred Oldsmobile out of the water box and heats up the tires once again. His competitor, Mike Dunn, who has the lane choice. Let's go to Steve in the pits.
You know, as we walk between the various pits between rounds, checking on the cars and drivers, we get a lot of interesting comments from the fans, and some good ones, too. Do a piece on racing gas, Steve, or Steve. Longer interviews with John Force. Our problem is time. We don't have enough of it. It's kind of like watching the evening news. A half an hour with Tom Brokaw or Dan Rather really isn't enough if you want to know everything that's going on in the world. In the world of drag racing and in the world of news, you've got to read a good newspaper. In this sport, of course, it's National Dragster. What we can't give you, it will. And you only get National Dragster by joining the National Hot Rod Association. You get a patch and a pin and a rule book and all kinds of other goodies. And if you call the number on your screen right now, you'll get free Diamond P Sports Video Drag Racing 89. Come on, join on up and know everything there is to know about the sport of NHRA drag racing.
Steve, while that video is an exciting look back to 1989, I dare you to match the excitement of what's on the starting line. The potential of a Winston Championship rides in the cockpit of that Oldsmobile driven by John Force. He is the underdog coming into this match in the Final Four. Mike Dunn ran quicker in the previous round and's got the lane choice. A little bit of tire smoke off Force's car, and Dunn defeats him. Mike Dunn, a 5:21, 273 miles an hour. He has just put away today the number 2 and number 1 cars in the Winston Championship and forces John Force to go to Pomona to clinch the title. Here's the national record holder, Jim White. His Dodge Daytona is racing Richard Hartman. And with the lane choice, White has selected the far lane of this racetrack. Right now, Steve is with the spoiler.
Mike Dunn made the final in Topeka with, quite honestly, a lot of luck. Mike Dunn, you have made the final in Dallas with a lot of performance, a truckload of it.
Yeah, it's been running real good, I'll tell you. This is like a dream come true to be.
What do you think it ran?
Oh, I felt pretty good. I felt like a high team, maybe low 20 there.
You got it, 5:21.
Yeah, it felt pretty good. It just nosed over a little bit before the lights. Felt kind of like that 19 run. So if we can just keep that consistency, I think we have a pretty good shot at winning this deal.
For either one of these drivers, that's quite a challenge to exceed that 5:21 and pick up the lane choice. Hartman has run in the 5:20s throughout the bulk of the day, but remember, this man, Jim White, has picked up the record at a 5:14. Another tremendous run for White. A 5:20.20. Roland Leong and Wes Cerny and crew showing their excitement. That gives him the all-important lane choice as he faces Mike Dunn, who is entering a final round for the second event in a row. Those finals coming up next at the Texas Motorplex. This Chief Auto Parts Nationals has certainly brought out a huge crowd. Over 45,000 people jammed into the Texas Motorplex. Once again, let's go back to the pits and Steve.
You know, officially, mathematically, McCullough's got a shot, but your crew is smiling. They know they're the Winston champs.
Steve, I haven't got aggravated over losing this race yet, but you know, in the baseball game, the NASCAR guys said, you know, they thought they had it, and I said it wasn't over till it's over. And that fits for McCullough. And I've told my guys, you don't start thinking that way right to the end. We're going to bust our buns right into the end and do just for our sponsors what we said we'd do. And that's when. We lost here today, and we got to go to Pomona and win again.
And that race coming up in just 2 weeks to conclude this 1990 season. Here's the finals in Pro Stock. The Dodge of Darrell Alderman making an impressive charge for his first ever Winston title. If he wins this race, it just about spells doom for the other 4 competitors in the points chase. He is challenged by Tony Christian driving the Chevy Beretta. Something goes wrong with Alderman's car, and Christian upsets Darrell Alderman to take the Chief Auto Parts Nationals crown. Tony Christian, 7.35 seconds. His speed, 186 miles an hour. As we watch again, Alderman had a very slight advantage off the starting line. But at about half-track, something went wrong with the Dodge. There you saw the nose fall right at that point. From then on, it was Tony Christian all the way. He sped across the finish line, taking his third national event victory, the last one coming in 1988 at Brainerd, Minnesota, and the North Star Nationals. For Darrell Alderman, what a disappointment after such domination the entire weekend to lose to mechanical problems. Steve?
Aren't you glad you didn't go up there and try a hole shot in red light? That had to go through your mind.
No, there's no sense out here. I mean, why give up a race? I figured I could beat him. I mean, these guys have been running so good, something's got to go wrong.
Something broke, obviously. When you come back, you do it all the way.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little quiet right now.
You're numb is what you are.
I'm numb. I don't believe what happened. I look back, I didn't see red, and I don't know. The only way you could beat him probably is if something broke, and I'm lucky. I want to thank Roone Morrison, Harold Whitmore, and everybody with me that helped me this weekend. Thanks a lot.
I think there's more in this man's future. Look out, 91.
I hope so.
Tony Christian, the champion in pro stock, but boy, what a reshuffling of the point standings. Alderman in the lead, Ekman is now second, Larry Morgan third, Warren Johnson fourth, and way back is Bob Glidden. As Tony Christian celebrates about a half a mile away, Eddie Hill getting his race car ready and himself prepared for the finals in Top Fuel. At the Chief Auto Parts Nationals at the Texas Motorplex, we're down to the last two cars in Top Fuel Eliminator. Eddie Hill against Frank Hawley. Hill has the lane choice, but Hawley has an emotional advantage going for him. His car owner, Darrell Gwynn, is the driving force behind the success of this car. Gwynn is on hand, as he has been at every race since Indy, and earlier Steve talked to him.
Darrell, you had to change engines before the semis, and then a lot of smoke out of the engine in winning the semis.
Yeah, matter of fact, we almost didn't make the semis. We rushed and rushed, trying to get her up there, but the clutch wasn't even adjusted properly for that run, and consequently, that's why it hurt it on that particular run. So I think when we go up there with everything right, we'll have a number on the board, and Eddie will be in the other lane with another good number. We'll just have to see who gets there first.
A Darrell Gwynn car has been in the final round here at the Texas Motorplex since the day it was built.
Yeah, you bet, and I put a little pressure on Frank going in here, telling him that, and seems as though it paid off, but he's doing a heck of a job under all the pressure from my accident, from all the crew guys have pitched in. Everybody's just been great, and I just can't wait till the sun goes down here in Dallas.
Ooh, they always get quicker then. Good luck.
You bet. Thank you.
Good numbers have been the order of the day for both these drivers. Hill a 5:04, Hawley a 5:05 in the previous round. Hill rolling into the staging beam. Hawley in the near lane, the last to stage. And Hill smokes the tires. Frank Hawley left for the quarter mile. Darrell Gwynn and the entire crew celebrating the victory by Frank Hawley, a 5:08 at 277 miles an hour. Gathering around Darrell, his crew, his dad, crew chief Ken Veeney. Fuzzy Carter coming over to offer congratulations. And for the second time this season, Frank Hawley moves into the winner's circle. As we look in replay, look in the far lane, and you can see the loss of traction that spelled doom for Eddie Hill. The engine coming to life in Jim White's funny car. Remember back just a round ago and what a difference a hundredth of a second can make. Here's the Pontiac of Mike Dunn. He ran a 5:21. Thought he had a strong chance at lane choice. But Jim White comes up, blasts out a 5:20. He picks the lane and puts Dunn on the near side of the racetrack. But as we have just seen with Frank Hawley and Eddie Hill, that may be the best lane at this time. At the far end of the racetrack, there's lots of celebrating going on. Let's join Steve Evans.
Frank Hawley wins his second Top Fuel national event. And Frank, you would not be hurried on the starting line. Even though he moved up deep stage, you just did your own thing.
Well, maybe that comes from a little bit of schooling. I mean, you just can't. Eddie's been doing this for so long, and he's the kind of guy that's going to do something like that. And I sure as heck don't hold it against him, because He also knows that I probably wasn't going to change my mind on my routine, but I'm just so excited for Coors and for Darrell and all the other sponsors and people that have stuck behind the team. It's almost a relief to have won another race because this car is so good. I think it should have won 3 or 4 throughout the season, but maybe we'll do that next year.
A departing 503, Frank wins it here in Texas.
And while Joe Amato went out in round number 2, he maintains his lead over Gary Ormsby. 254 points to be exact. It goes to the last race of the year. The crew down to offer congratulations to Frank Hawley. As he noted, they're already looking ahead to 1991. And here's another team that is looking ahead to next season. This is the Circle A team put together by E.B. Abel. The crew chief for Mike Dunn is his dad, longtime racer himself, Jim Dunn. Earlier, Steve had a chance to talk with him.
For a guy like Jim Dunn, father of Mike, crew chief on this car, who has been racing all these years with his own funny car and dragsters, and you never really had a lot of spares. It's gotta be fun to have all these little things to massage and use and burn up.
That's neat, yeah. I mean, used to we have to say, well, we got 2 pistons, we got to go 4 rounds. Now we got 100 pistons, put them all in every round. And it shows, I mean, it's easier to run with a square root of money, you know.
I think he's having a lot of fun. Look at that smile.
Smile he should. He's put his son into the finals twice already this year, and this team's only been together for 3 races. Jim White on the far side, Mike Dunn in the near lane. Set in for Jim White. Mike Dunn is the champion. His elapsed time, 5:45 at 212 miles an hour. Possibly something going wrong on his car, but the problem's much more severe for Jim White. He does have one consolation, though. He leaves here the new national record holder at a 5.14 second elapsed time. As we look in replay, you can see exactly where the difficulty began. It was just about 60 feet off the starting line. That's when the Dodge broke and the Pontiac prevailed. Steve?
In only his 3rd race for a brand new team, Mike Dunn is in the winner's circle on one of the toughest tracks in drag racing. Can you believe this?
No, it's kind of hard to believe, but I'll tell you, the Snickers Pontiac's been running good. I tell you, you hear it all the time, the crew chiefs and the crew, but I mean, that's it. I mean, they did it. My dad, Jim Dunn. I mean, basically, this is a match race combination with money.
Before the body was latched down, we noticed the blower belt is gone. That's why it's slowed up.
Yeah, I broke the blower belt down there's a ways. We're going to start changing that a little more often, I think, just to be safe. But we'll take them any way we can get them.
Head to the winner's circle.
Thank you.
While John doesn't want his crew to celebrate, the teammates of John Force know they just about have clinched the Winston title for the first time in 18 years of racing for John Force. In our opinion, the Goodyear Eagle driver of the race is Mike Dunn. Goodyear will be sending a check for $1,000 in his name to the scholarship fund of the Specialty Equipment Market Association. From a very good driver for a very good cause. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Dallas. The 1990 Chief Auto Parts Nationals has been brought to you by Budweiser, the king of beers. Remember, know when to say when. And by Goodyear Eagle Radials, the best-selling performance radials in the world. And by Autolite Spark Plugs, the only plugs guaranteed for 2 years, no matter how far you go. Coverage of the NHRA Chief Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports in association with ESPN.